Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm here to be talking about my top 10 favorite entertainment moments from 2021. Now, this is a kind of new thing I did last year. I decided to switch it up since there wasn't that many movies I saw in that year for obvious reasons. And so I talk about moments from either TV shows, video games, etc. besides just movies. Like it's a whole variety of whatever came out in entertainment. And I'm doing the same thing this year. I think I'm just going to start doing that from now on. So, without further ado, let's dive into it. So, at number 10, we have the bloody opening from The Suicide Squad 2021. Now, I was really excited for this movie because it's directed by James Gunn, and they needed to redeem The Suicide Squad since the other movie was just so garbage. And with this huge cast and all the marketing saying don't get too attached, and it has, like the X's or bullseyes or whatever over all the character posters and stuff like that. So I was prepared for a lot of people to die. I just wasn't expecting, at least it was a good half of the cast that they were marketing and all in the first 10 minutes of the movie. And how they went out, it went from being kind of hilarious in some of the ways to pretty, sad. And they all went out in unique and crazy ways, and it was just so gory and crazy. It really sets the tone of what the movie is. It's a really fun, entertaining thrill ride, a comic book movie, and also really, really R-rated. At number 9, we have Blitzo and Moxie vs. Stryker from Hell of a Boss Season 1, Episode 5. Now, this was, this year they released a whole bunch of episodes from Hell of a Boss since they started making them. I believe that last year, at the end of last year, they released the first 2. And this episode was pretty big for me in a lot of ways because, for one, I think they got like such a huge voice actor, Norman Reedus, who's voicing Stryker, the cowboy imp. And I just thought like the fight and the music and stuff throughout the fight is great, and also the build-up story-wise, because this is basically a Moxie episode, who's my favorite character in this show, who is basically always underestimated and doesn't look like he can really hold his own, and he's always being pushed around and, the joke by everyone. And here he's able to, stand up for himself and, defeat this guy who is not really nice. And Blitz, on the other hand, who kind of had like a crush or a bromance with this guy, and the guy wants to kill Stolas, who is his current fling, who not only does he use for his book that lets them go to the living world for their business, but also he's starting to get feelings for him. So it adds a lot of emotional layers to them, and just the fight kind of lets out everything that's been building up in the episode, and I just thought it was a really entertaining scene. At number 8, Blood Debt Has to Be Paid in Blood from Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Now, I thought this movie was fantastic on so many levels, being a new character being introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and such a fun, fresh, unique spin that we haven't really seen that many times before in the MCU. But my favorite moment, a lot of people say it's the bus scene, which I thought that scene was fantastic. There was a lot of great moments in this movie. But my personal favorite is the flashback after you see how the mom dies to this rival gang that the Mandarin guy, Shang-Chi's dad, did wrong in the past. And this was when he was trying to be a good person, put away the reins, and be with his family. And when that happens, the dude just loses it, takes his son to where a group of them are, kills everyone in public, and it's so brutal. And I love the cinematography and how like it shows it not just like face in front, like it shows it from the kid's perspective with the mirror on the side, so you see it in different angles. It was just so good, and the music was so good. It really just shows how crazy this dude is, but also at the same time you understand why he's doing this. You feel for the guy. At number 7, Moxie and Blitzo's song from Hell of a Boss Season 1, Episode 6. Now, another Hell of a Boss one. I love this show so much, if you can tell already. And this moment here, which is really great, is because it's basically a big way to have great animation, really fun songs and also some really great character development. Like, the main thing I got out of this is while they're going, because they basically were getting drugged, hallucinogenics, and they go into song sequences where Moxie's is a funny nod to Phantom of the Opera, where the song is basically him being like, why do you treat me like this to Blitz? Because Blitz always makes fun of him and, talks down to him and stuff like that. And they do little hints like Blitz does it as a way of insecurity, since something bad must happen in his past, because how he acts now to people that are his friends or he cares for, in a way, he just pushes them away and treats them like shit. And he cares for them, but how he goes about it doesn't make them think that he does. And so Moxie calls him out on that. And from Blitz's perspective, it shows his past relationships, I'd say, with Fizzaroli, Veronica, Stryker, and the current one with Stolas, and how in each of his relationships he did something that was bad, or unintentionally or intentionally, whatever the case, to push them away. And it's set up like some really emotional beats that the newest episode that came out really dived and explored into, which I'll talk about that in a minute later on the video. And I just thought this was like the whole package. Great animation, great songs, just great story beats. It was just perfect all around. At number 6, we have Aunt May's death from Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, this was one of the emotional gut punches for me in this movie, because a lot of people, they say they were, oh, I'm not surprised and all. I was shocked. I wasn't expecting that. I mean, sure, I was expecting, I guess, someone to die, but it's really rare to see in the MCU where they kill off like a main character and they stay dead. So the way they did it was just so heartbreaking, so just emotional. Like, because at first you thought, oh, she just got, hit and, by the glider, and then, Spider-Man kind of blocked the explosion. She's okay. And they were talking and everything, and then all of a sudden she collapses and dies in his arms. And I'm like, what the heck? I was just like floored at not only the way it happened, but just the performances. It just blew me away at how good that scene was. At number 5, Xander tricks Liana into playing her advantage and the 7th vote off from Survivor 41. Now, this season was kind of a mixed bag for me. There was lots of moments that I wasn't a fan of, and there was lots of moments that I loved so much, being a big Survivor fan. And this episode in particular, I kind of cheated by adding both, but they kind of go hand in hand. So I just thought, so basically, for those who haven't rewatched the show, Xander, along with Evie and Tiffany, are the 3 on the bottom, with kind of Sydney. She isn't really a part of their group, but they're all 4 on the bottom. And the vote is being split between Evie and Sydney before the merge, when everyone's together. And Liana, who was with them, betrayed them for another group. And she had this knowledge is power advantage, where if she asked someone if they had an idol or advantage or whatever, and they did, they had to give it to her. And so everyone knew, or so they thought, that Xander had the idol. And when she asked him, she's smirking and smiling. And she's like, do you have an idol, Xander? And he's like, no, but I have this fake. And it was such a keen moment, because she really thought he was stupid, because he knew that everyone knew he had it. He gave it to one of his, and then you see he gave it, which was a clever editing moment, is that showed the flashback where he gave it to Tiffany, and it was just perfect. And then not only that, which adds to Xander's epic gameplay at this tribal council, is when they split the votes, Tiffany's about to play the idol for Evie, and he had a gut feeling, he had the feeling that they weren't going to vote for her, because they thought that she had the idol. And even though it was a close vote, he was right, and she still stayed in the game after that. And so it was just a fantastic way of not only television, but also strategic gameplay. And it was just so entertaining to watch. At number 4, Think, Mark, Think! From Invincible Season 1. Now, Invincible is a phenomenal animated show, superhero show, whatever you want to call it, both. But the main moment, not just for the obvious meme potential and just the hilariousness of this, it also adds a lot of emotional layers to this scene, because when you watch it in the context of the show, it really hits you in the feels, and it's such a great moment in the show, and really great moment for both characters, father and son. But also, of course, not watching the show and you see the memes everywhere, it was fantastic. At number 3, the ending of Loki season 1. Loki season 1 was such a surprise for me, because the Marvel shows, I haven't really hated any of them except for maybe WandaVision, but they haven't really stood out for me in that many ways, especially with how short they are, only being like 6 or 7 episodes or whatever. But this show really transcends what the potential of these shows could be for me, because I always loved the idea of giving these smaller characters in the movies a bigger role in shows and stuff. I thought that was cool, and this show really basically started what the multiverse was, showing different alternate versions of the character. Really, like, it just caps off basically with the ending, where who you thought was the main bad guy is Sylvie, who's the girl version of Loki, another variant of Loki. They kind of team up in the latter half of the show, and when they finally meet the main guy, the He Who Remains or whatever, and you see the actor who they got to play Kane the Conqueror in Ant-Man 3, which was a big shock, because I didn't hear he was even in this. And that's just another version of him, multiverse. And it's just the ramifications by the decision made at the end, and where the characters are left at the end. It just adds so much. And plus, the performances, it was really great. It was emotional. The music was so good. This show really is phenomenal. It's so good. And the ending makes it one of the reasons why it's so good. At number 2, we have the House of Asmodeus and the car scene from Helluva Boss Season 1, Episode 7. Now, yes, I kind of cheated again, adding 2 moments, but like with the Survivor one, they kind of go hand in hand. For one, House of Asmodeus is a real banger. That song is so good. And also, it has different groups of people really singing it. And it shows different dynamics of, I'd say, 3 relationships. You have Moxie and Millie, who just love each other. They don't care if people shun them or look down on them. They're just doing their thing. You have Fizzaroli and Ozzy, they're definitely in a relationship, no doubt. Especially with some of the animation choices and their facial expressions. They're definitely in one. Just how they just don't... they're just acting like they're the shit. And they're acting like they're so cool and high and mighty, and they're just making fun of everyone else. They're that kind of group. And then you have Stolas and Blitz, who their relationship is such a mess, and for good and worse, for inks and for good emotional story beats. And the way how everything plays off, like just the words in the lyrics and the facial expressions, like the animation, everything mixes so well. Which, after the events of that, when, Blitz and Stolas leave after being humiliated and made fun of and stuff, they get to a car scene where, Blitz drops him off, which is pretty funny, because he didn't need to be dropped off, because he teleported there at the beginning. So that's interesting. And he's like, you want to come inside and, we can cuddle and watch a movie and whatever. And Blitz latches out at him, saying he only uses him, he doesn't really care for him, and all of the emotional insecurities, which was mentioned in the last episode through that song sequence. See how it's all coming together? And it's just such a great moment, and I'm so excited to see where this goes. But it was fantastic. I just had to mention it. It was so good. So good. Alright, before we get to number 1, I have some honorable mentions, so I'm going to quickly get through these. Honorable mention number 1, The Truth of Icarus. Now, this movie for the Eternals, I was kind of intrigued because the marketing didn't really tell you who the bad guys were per se. I mean, I kind of had a feeling maybe an Eternal would go bad, but not really, because I thought it'd be those gross-looking CGI alien things, the deviants. But when it turned out to be the supposed leader, Icarus, and the reasons you learn why, I was just like, whoa. It had my jaw dropped. Honorable mention number 2, Venom 2's end credit scene. Now, this movie was a guilty pleasure in a lot of ways, but the ending is what got everyone talking. And of course, because it showed at the end he kind of teleported to a different reality, which of course was the MCU, so that alone had everyone freaking out. And I just had to mention that because that was such a great experience to see in a theater. Honorable mention number 3, Rengoku's death from the Demon Slayer Mugen Train movie. Now, this movie was so fantastic on so many levels, but the way, like, this character who's like really strong and just so cool and such a great person and character, and that you didn't really get enough of them, but you expected a lot, and how he went out was like, it was such an epic fight, but just the emotional way he went out, it was just heartbreaking. And I still think about that, how they did that, because I was just shocked. Like, I wasn't expecting him to die. I really wasn't, because I thought he was like a main character in the show, and I thought, like, we barely got introduced to him, and he looked like such a, a main figure, so I was just shocked. With that said, of course, we have our number 1 pick, which, no surprise, the return of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, this moment, everyone freaked out, applauded, screamed, and it was built up for such a long time. To see them finally, the 3 Spider-Man on the screen again, was a dream come true. It made everything to me. It was beautiful. It was emotional. It was awesome. I loved the interactions and just how they came on. It was just like, whoa, and everyone was freaking out and stuff. It was such a beautiful moment, and I was so glad to be in that theater and see it on, like, with a whole group of people. It was a truly magical moment that I won't forget ever. It was fantastic. So with all that said, that was my top 10 entertainment moments of 2021. What did you all think of what I had on the list? Do you have anything I didn't mention that you want to say? Please let me know down below in the comment section. And if you want to hit the subscribe button and the bell as well to get notified on when I upload, that would mean so much to me. And I hope you all have a fantastic new year, and I'll see you in the next year. Bye, guys.